All right, so in this video, I'm going to talk about lucid dreaming. And, it's a question I got from a viewer of mine. And the whole thing is that I'm going to start doing this. Like, whenever I start getting asked certain questions, I will make a video on it. The reason why some of the questions actually help me as well, because it kind of like, before you make a video, you're obviously going to get into the mode of like how you're going to structure the video. But in actuality, I mean, you start to think about the things that you're doing as well. Because, see, a lot of people will talk about certain things in videos, but they're not really practicing what they're talking about. And that's something that I want to make sure I'm not doing. So I was in that flow of like lucid dreaming at one point, and that was when the whole wave of me trying to get out of body was occurring. And in that process, I started to have a lot of lucid dreaming experiences. However, there were certain things I was doing that was triggering me to have lucid dreams, and even more or less just, in a nutshell, remember your dreams, right? Because one thing is lucid dreaming, the other thing is even remembering what the fuck you dreamt. You know what I'm saying? So one thing that I noticed that was triggering me to remember my lucid dreams, or remember my dreams rather, is writing down my dreams. And when I moved from the one property that I owned to the other, I remember upon that move, the room was structured differently, and I no longer kept that same notepad next to my bed. And in that happening, the whole habit of not doing it just started happening. You get what I'm saying? Now, it's just more or less like certain times, certain things happen, and you don't intend to do it that way. But I don't remember my dreams as much as I was when I was doing it. But this got so intense that I started to lucid dream. And then I want to get into the experiences of lucid dreaming and how this has a lot to do with even manifestations and whatnot. But with the whole dreaming thing, I remember that just the act of having that pen and paper, or that book and paper next to you, right? Already you're telling your subconscious mind that you want to remember your dreams. So you're gonna make it happen. It's gonna happen. I'll give you an example. It's like this. I don't know if this happened to you, but there's times that I am so intent on waking up at a certain time that I'll set my alarm, but I'll wake up just minutes before my alarm goes off. Only because I really, and it was a subtle feeling, right? It wasn't like you have to like desperately want to do it, because there's a lot of people who are like so scared that they won't wake up at that time, that they need that alarm. Because it's kind of like somebody trying to fall asleep. You try to fall asleep, it's harder to fall asleep. But when you just let go and relax, you're more than likely to fall asleep. Also, maintaining your focus also, because a lot of times you got a lot on your mind and it prevents you from falling asleep. But either way, the act of holding that pen and paper, having that pen and paper next to you, will also let you know that you want to remember your dream. But now here's another interesting thing though. Suppose when you wake up, you'll remember like a snippets of the dream, but the act also of picking up the pen and book right before you get up to even take a piss, you start to hold that pen in your hand, and before you do anything, just start to write down what you remember. The entire dream starts to flood in right away. I'm talking about before you go piss, because if you go piss, you're less likely to remember the dream as if you were doing it right at the moment you wake up before you go pee, right? So when you start doing these little things, eventually you'll start to even get into the lucid dreaming part. There's been times where in my old apartment, when I was living in New York, I dreamt that I fell asleep. I'm not dreaming. I fell asleep when over there we had those old school furnaces, and I remember that I fell asleep with my hand on the furnace, but the furnace happened to turn on in the middle of the night, and then this shit got fucking hot, but I didn't wake up. In my dream, I was dreaming that my hand was on fire and I was shooting fire from my hand, you know, and it was the most trippiest thing. Now, this is something I was using later on as an imagination of what it felt like, exactly the sensation I felt and the feeling I felt when I was like pushing fire out of my hand in real life towards certain things, but I was doing it in an energetic way. All right, I'll make another video on that because I don't want to lose the point of what I'm going to talk about here, because there were certain things I was doing with that, and that I could take a whole video. But what I want to talk about here is basically like certain lucid dreams that I had that stimulated certain things in my waking life, okay, as far as intuition, realizations, and whatnot. Now, a lot of people want to lucid dream to manifest human physical things here, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's 100% good. Now, the purpose of lucid dreaming is that when you're aware that you're in a dream, okay, mainly when you're in a dream, main and foremost, the dream is about you. It doesn't matter who the people, places, and things are. And I'm talking about before it becomes lucid. Whatever you're dreaming about is all about you. It doesn't matter. Let's say if you were dreaming about Angelina Jolie, if you were dreaming about anybody, it doesn't matter who it may be. What does Angelina Jolie represent to you in this waking state? Because whatever you feel about that individual in that dream, the people, places, and things, and the experiences you were having is going to be all about you, and nothing really matters there. The only thing that matters is how you feel in the moment of while you're interacting with those people, places, and things in your dream. That's going to indicate whether it was a favorable or an unfavorable experience. Now, the same way that I talk about in this waking state, that everything in life is basically showing you what you are. It's a mirror reflection of what you are. In that dream state, everything there is showing you a mirror of what you are as well. Now, depending on how your day goes, how your life is going, or even to the smallest minute level, how you went to sleep, can actually determine what happens in your dreamlike state. Okay? And it's always going to be all about you. But like I say it in this waking state, it's not always a direct mirror, right? It could be an indirect mirror or a reflection or a version of things that's happening in your waking state. Okay? So in this dreamlike state, when you're experiencing certain things, I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. I was watching a video of this one individual talking about how he was talking about somebody else who made a book, and he says that he was demonizing his dad because he used to beat him, but the guy is actually a successful guy today, right? So the guy that was talking about the guy that demonized his dad said that his dad was a lot like his dad, and that he instead of demonizing him, he should be actually praising him because it made him the guy who he is today. Now, I started to think a lot about this. So I noticed that whenever certain things are impactful to you, those are the things that basically present themselves to you in your dreamlike state. And not only that, but you'll know that they're impactful because you may not remember the entire night of dreaming. You'll only remember that main portion of it. Or it may happen where just before you wake up, that'll be the most recent thing that presented to you, and then you woke up. It's not to say that that was, everything structured in a way where it'll be the last thing you dream just to make sure you remember it. No, it just happened to be that it could be at 3 a.m. It's so impactful to you, and you'll remember it to the point that it'll stimulate you to wake up, right? So you wake up and then you're like, oh shit, I just dreamt about something, right? But you had different events happening before that, but they didn't stimulate you to wake up. So in other words, your subconscious mind will actually communicate to you in that way too, that it'll make you wake up so that you can remember your dream. Because if, let's say that was impactful to you, but then you continue sleeping, it more than likely will be harder to remember, So that's something that you can actually say, okay, then I know that this is actually very important, because I woke up in the moment that I just dreamt this, and it was the most immediate thing that caused me to wake up, right? So with me, for example, I dreamt of all this, but as I was hearing about the guy talking about the guy's dad that he was talking about, he made it in his video where he says that every father should be hard on their kids, especially if it's a boy, and beat their ass when they don't listen, because it makes him a stronger man, right? So I started to think about this, because I'm like, I don't hit my child. Now, the amount of times I hit my child in his lifetime, I'll tell you right now, it may have been like 2 or 3 times. And it was because he was really acting up. You get what I'm saying? But I use my authority first, okay? And it's not to say that if you beat your child or not is right or wrong. I don't care what you do with your child. I just never had to get to the point where I had to beat my child. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying anything bad about this individual who says that he beats his child. He's a successful guy too. You get what I'm saying? And if that's your way of creating your child to be a successful man, that's about as good as it gets for you. But it's not in me to want to beat my child to create a successful man. Like, I watch these successful people, for example, what's this small fucking rich guy's name? His last name is Pena. Jose Pena, I don't know what the fuck his name is. He's a billionaire. He lives in a castle. But he basically is all about beating the kids, and even his seminars are all about beating your fucking ass. But not physically, but I'm talking about with words, like beating your ass. Like, there's a lot of people who are abusive with words, right? So I noticed that with my child, my authority is strong enough to inflict the fear of God in him. So it's that, and I'll take away what he enjoys most. Okay? So what he enjoys doing most, I'll take it away, and that's it. If it comes to a point where even that doesn't work, then an ass whooping is in order, right? But I never really get to that point. And aside from that, he's not a bad kid. You hear what I'm saying? He listens and he does what he has to do. And it's strange because sometimes I'm like, well, you know, how bad is your kid that you have to whoop his ass? You hear what I'm saying? If anything, sometimes I'm the one that needs an ass whooping as an adult myself. So there's things that my son teaches me sometimes, and it's easier for him to say I'm sorry to me than it is for me to say it to him. And there's things that I'm like saying to myself, you know, I should be teaching him that. But again, there's no right and wrong. We have different scenarios, different experiences. Not everybody should be beating their child to create a stronger man. These type of messages sometimes, it's like, you know, then you got the person, you know, acting on that, and they shouldn't even be like that. Not with their individual child, who's a lot different than that child, than the other child. And the child is in some ways, it's a creation from you that you created. You'll know how you have to treat that individual, you know, based on certain scenarios and circumstances. Either way you put it, the purpose of me even bringing that up is because I had a very, very clear, almost lucid dream. But the moment it became lucid is when I woke up. But because I wasn't neutral, I got emotional. And the moment I became aware, all the colors got very clear. Everything became a lot more vivid and lucid, to the point where the environment was looking back at me, which is really, really trippy, and I'm gonna tell you why. So anyway, my son, he acted up in the dream. He did something that he wasn't supposed to do, and I hit him. But here's the interesting thing: upon me hitting him, my girl got involved. And she never gets involved in this waking state. Whenever I do something to discipline my child, she never gets involved. She's not supposed to get involved. And she knows very well not to get involved. And in this state, I hit my child, and she got involved. And in my feeling, I felt like, you see, here's the thing though. In the dream, it's not like scenarios will happen for you to realize certain things. In an instant, I started to get vibes from her of child abuse, not a good father. I got all that out of her. But in that moment, I became extremely angry, where I looked at her to the point where she was about to get it too. Now, here's the funny thing though. I never, ever hit my woman, ever. And I would never, ever do that. If it ever got to the point that I have to hit my woman, I'm going to leave her first. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the moment I feel like I have to hit her is when I know that that bitch is not worth my time. Because we're in a fucking bitch-ass society and system that caters to the woman, and I will be in jail as quick as a fucking snap of a finger. And then I'm gonna sit there and regret why the fuck I did it. But not because she may not have deserved it. I'm gonna regret doing it to the point that it took away my freedom, because we're under this system that caters to the woman in that way. But either way you put it, aside from that, it's not in me to hit her. Because if I hit her, I'm going to break her. This is a fact. See, if you're going to do something, you don't do it half-ass. I'm not going to hit her and leave a bruise. I know if I hit her, I'm going to break her. It's just like if you get into a fight. That's why I avoid fights at all costs, right? If I get into a fight, I'm going to finish the fight. You're going to either have to knock me out or I'm going to knock you out. If not, let's not get into the fight to begin with. Okay? And if I hit somebody, I'm going to break something. So you do something, you do it. And if you're not about it, then don't do it. I'm not about that. I'm not about hitting a girl. Because if I'm going to hit her, I'm going to hit her hard. The same way I hit a dude. And I know that because in my rage state, I'm not going to fucking think. It's just going to be acting on the fucking emotions. But I have become very good at redirecting rage and anger toward other areas. And this has taken a lot of ego fucking deaths to do that. And it kind of stings in the moment. And you know who's straightened that out in me a lot? My girl. Because there's times that it happens mainly when I'm driving. If I'm driving and I get cut off or somebody's tailgating me, it pisses me off. I've learned to control that. But the one who's taught me to control that has been her. Because she's the one that's pointed it out every time that I'm about to lose my patience. So every time that something like that happens, even if she's not in the car, she's the first one that pops in my mind to tell me, hey man, just relax, it's not worth it, and blah, blah, blah. So there's things that I pick up from everybody. Okay? But I guide her, and I'm the man, I'm the leader. Okay? But I take those suggestions from her. And it's not to say that I'm her boss. Because she's my boss in certain aspects of the game. But when it comes down to making major decisions, I make those decisions. But I know I've moved away from the topic in conversation. But where I was getting at with this is that upon that dream, when I got angry, in my dream, I was about to put my hands on her. Okay? And I know there's going to be a lot of wannabe professionals that are going to tell me what they think this is. I know what it is. Everybody has a hidden fucking, like, you always want to be the guy that fights against evil. Well, you're fighting against something that's already in you. That's what you just decided to take a position of good to fight against evil. But the reason that evil is there is because it's in you for it to be there. And the moment you take a position, you're creating more of that. It doesn't matter if you're going to war against it. It's kind of like if you have a war against drugs, then there's more drugs created. If you are a vegan and you want to become an activist and go fight against meat eaters, you're just creating more meat eaters. Because you see, a lot of the times these people, if you want them to stop eating meat, it would be out of love and a realization that they maybe don't need these animals. But the moment that you come out and you start to fight against meat eaters, and then now you start to create fake meats and, let's say, lab-grown shit, I mean, you're going to have these people in their ego too to actually go against the grain because of what you're doing. You get what I'm saying? So it's like what you go against, you make stronger. Resistance makes stronger. Okay? And the whole thing is that even though you say vegan versus meat eater, okay? It's vegan against meat eaters, right? But if you look at the word against, you lean against each other, and that's how you support that structure. So you both need each other. I've mentioned this in previous videos, how in order for the villain to exist, right, the hero has to exist. And in order for the hero to exist, the villain has to exist. If not, how would you know what a hero or a villain is if you didn't have something to contrast it against? So when you look at lucid dreams and your waking state, it's as within, so without. As above, so below. This is how everything works. So the moment you become lucid in the dream and you feel like all eyes are on you now, I'm going to tell you what happened. This happened to me where when I became lucid in my dream and you're really paying attention, everything becomes brighter and it becomes way more realistic even just upon you becoming lucid, right? But you'll notice also that everybody starts to look back at you. And this is where I start to realize that, wow, you know, the fact that I became aware, my environment became aware of me. Which means I am my environment. It's like it's happening simultaneously. Here, you'll also attract certain people, places, and things in this waking state. Only it happens in a slower vibratory state, so it takes time to manifest. You see, in a lucid dream, things happen right away. They don't take time. So the moment you became aware, you'll also notice that the awareness is looking back at you, which is the people, places, and things in the dream. Angelina Jolie was looking at me. Everybody was looking at me. So here in this waking state, the moment you start to pay attention to your spirituality and you start to harness your energy, kind of like when we talk about, you know, people who want to do the no fapping and semen retention, which there's a little bit of science to it. You know, I'm not against it, but I'm not for it, and I'm gonna make another video on it. But you'll start to notice that this is why people start to look back at you, because you're paying attention to yourself. You're becoming more self-aware. This is why you'd say women are starting to look back at you. It's just like where you're putting your attention and energy is exactly where it's going. If you're always trying to seek validation outside of you or doing things outside of yourself, you're outside of yourself, then that's what happens. Nobody's paying attention to you, because it's the same way. People will see you how you see yourself. So if you respect yourself, then people will more than likely respect you. This is why when it comes down to even people fucking with you, nobody will even think to fuck with you if you know you're unfuckwithable. Okay? This is how your aura and your energy emits out. So like I mentioned in previous videos with boxing matches and whatnot, like, you know what somebody's energy is like. Well, that's the point of face-offs. You're really facing yourself. But the one that wins is the one who really is about it. The one who believes in himself. That's why people say, believe in yourself. And then when you're in the fight, how much you can endure, people say that person has heart. And why? Because that person is in their heart space. But people think the heart space is a fucking love organ, and it's actually a war organ as well. This is why even before you go to war, you hear the drums. Boom, boom, boom. And what are those drums? Those drums are the actual main tune and frequency for the heart space. Now the heart is also a projector of your reality. This is why the heart chakra is green, and your attitude and reflection and attitude toward life determines what you get back. Like when you're in a garden, the garden is green, right? The garden responds and reacts to your energy. And then when you have that love and passion in your heart that you are working with, the plants, then you have a green thumb. This could be in business. You attract money in the same way. You have a green thumb because you count money like this. You attract people, places, and things, right? Because you're in your green space. People of the same vibratory state as you will come back and be attracted to you. This is a way to become more attractive, right? Is being in your heart space, being in harmonious chemistry with the environment, attitude toward life. But this, you know how this all starts with? Gratitude. So it doesn't matter, even if you're not 100% successful yet, it will get there because you're there now. And you realize that through the blessings you've gotten up until this point now. So everything that you've accomplished, even though it doesn't look like much, I bet you it's way better than where you were before. And if it's not, then look for the things that are, and you'll start to notice those things even more. People think that they're in a worse state now than they ever were, but it's only because you're not looking for those. You're actually paying attention to the bad things only. You're only paying attention to the bad things. If you paid attention to the good things, you'll notice, oh shit, yeah, that is there. It's kind of like when you want to buy, let's say you want to buy a red Corvette, a specific car, let's say a red Corvette, and now all of a sudden, after you went to the dealership and you started to do a lot more research, now you start to see a lot more of those cars on the road. It's not that they were never there. They were always there. Now you're paying attention to it. So that's how it is too with your life. You start to notice your things a lot more in your life too now. So here's the thing with lucid dreaming. This can also make you a better, and this is how I started the video with the realizations and whatnot. The moment I became lucid in my dreams, there was a couple of them that really bled into your waking life now, and it's not as direct as you would think. Let's say if I have a dream and I want to manifest a red Corvette, and my dream became lucid, and I'm driving a red Corvette in my dream. You know why this is actually beneficial? It is because you get to feel what a red Corvette feels like, because you went to the dealership, you test drove it, and then you have a lucid dream about it. You have more of an experience, right? And it can manifest because you're creating this reality for yourself. Because this is what's going to come to you, because you see your mind can't tell the difference between a real or a fake experience. So the more you're in that state, the more you can have a likely to attract it. But the way it happened with me, especially with what I know now and how I know I can channel information, is basically there was a point where I'm walking in the garden and I'm looking at my trees, and I noticed that there were elves in the trees. I never saw the elves, but I know that there were elves in the trees, right? Because there was a telepathic communication happening between me and the elves in the trees. Okay? So these elves, I don't remember what the fuck we were talking about, but my soul and spirit know what we were talking about. It was all I cared about was how I felt. And I felt empowered and enlightened. I felt like I was gaining knowledge and information. So that's all that mattered to me. Because I woke up and I'm like, here's the thing that I took from that lucid dream, is that I know what a telepathic communication feels like. That's what I got out of that dream, is that I really, really felt what a telepathic communication feels like. Because somebody will say, well, how do you know what it is like in this waking state? You know, we all have the power of telepathy. And then one will tell you, well, how do you know you're having a telepathic communication if you've never had one? Well, I know what it is because I had one in that lucid state, in that lucid dream. Now, the way if I was going to have a telepathic communication with somebody else, they would have to be in that same exact state that I'm in for me to be able to have a telepathic communication with them. It's like if you go to another planet and English is not their language, they have other ways to communicate. You ain't going to be able to communicate with that person. You know, even though it's possible, you would just have to be able to learn their language or learn their techniques to how to communicate. Like some people communicate with sign language when they don't have the ability to speak. But somebody doing all this to me, I don't know what they're doing because I don't know that language. I would have to learn that, right? So telepathy is something we can learn, and it's something that I know we had at one time. We just stopped using it, so it atrophied because we depended on the English language. And the thing is that during this telepathic communication, it was a very good communication. One thing is I never saw the elves. Well, how do you know what elves are, right? Only based on what you learned here in this waking state. Well, it didn't matter. I just knew what the energy was of elves. That's all that came to me when I was there. Elves. Like fairies. I remember I was in a fairy kingdom and these were lucid dreams. But the reason they were lucid is because when I was walking in my garden, I felt I got lucid. I realized I was in a dream. I looked at my trees, and then that's when the elves started talking to me. In my garden, again, this happened, where I'm looking at a log, but I was very in the wave of getting to know the fairy kingdom, that I manifested fairies in my lucid dream, but I didn't know they were fairies at that point because I wanted to manifest fairies, but here's how it happened. I looked at my dog like scratching a fucking log and like really getting aggressive at this log, and I'm telling my dog, yo, get the fuck out of there, because I thought it was like a raccoon or a mouse or something, and I didn't want him to get bit. But he just kept scratching, and my dog normally listens to me. I'm like, yo, Fui, come over here. And he comes. But he wasn't coming to me in the dream. He just kept aggressively trying to attack this log. And then out of nowhere, this poof. And here's the thing, though. I wanted to manifest fairies, and then that happened. And it kind of, I felt like I was deterring my attention. But a bright light came out. It was golden. And then my dog backed up when that happened. And then all of a sudden, I saw a orb of light just shoot up. But I knew that was fairies. You get what I'm saying? I knew it was fairies. And I felt energy just shoot up from my feet all the way up to my head. And it was just the most intense feeling that light just shot all the way up into the sky. But that was the fairies. But they didn't look like the fairies you would look at with little wings and whatnot. No, it was just a fucking orb. But in my dream, I knew it was a fucking fairy. You know? But they never showed their actual shape and form. But I just saw like a light or the energy signature of it. With the elves in the trees, there was no light orbs or anything. They were just in the trees. I was talking through the trees. So, you know, when all this happens, now you start to have realizations of the things you could do here in this waking state, right? So with me, I started to realize that when I wanted to know certain things, realizations start to happen. But these realizations are more like those sort of telepathic communications without them being directly telepathic communications like you would call it, you know? Because it's kind of like you're saying, oh, I communicate with the trees and animals and nature. I mean, you're not speaking the language that we speak to humans to them. You're speaking through them in a different way. You know what I'm saying? Like you speak through them through body language, mannerisms. You speak to them through, you know, certain sounds. Let's say if you want to make certain sounds when you communicate with them. Because like animals, for example, like my cats, they know a certain sound, right? That I make when it's like, when I want them to all come out. Because sometimes the only time they come out is like in the afternoon time when they want to eat. But during the day when I want them to come out, I just go, kitty, like that. And they all, like you'll see them come out from behind a tree, from, you know, from one side of the house, the other one from the forest, the other one from the tree. Like you see them all just come all together, but they were all in different areas. But they don't like to come out when it's hot and the sun is beaming. But when I want them to come out, they'll come out with that sound. So they get to know sounds. That's a way of communication, right? The subconscious mind communicates with you in that same form of way. You get what I'm saying? But you got to get to know yourself. This is the point of knowing yourself. The same way animals get to know how to communicate with you, your subconscious mind gets to know how to communicate with this animal. The animal, you know, being the mind. Okay, the mind, you can categorize that as God, because your body is a manifestation of your mind. It's an instrument of the mind, and the mind is God, right? And the body, being a manifestation or an instrument of the mind, the body, okay, is created in the image of God. And if you look at the people, places, and things outside of you, now you are being shown everything that's in this body, the body of Christ. So that's why it's important to respect yourself, have love for yourself. The more this you have within you, the more you can give it out, but the more you get it in return. It's the law of reciprocity, you know? And when it comes to dreaming, these type of things, you could become a lot more intuitive if it's in your heart to become more evolved spiritually. Then these are the things you could work on in this lucid dream. If it's more materialistic things, it can also happen. There's many different techniques to doing it, but I'll tell you one thing that really, really works is, number one, you got to really want to do it. You get what I'm saying? Or is it just an egotistical thing that just wants to have an experience? Like you want to have a roller coaster ride. You get what I'm saying? A lot of people do psychedelics, but they just want to have an experience, a trip. And then they come back and they think they're more spiritual, but they're just more evolved, egotistical humans. You get what I'm saying? But for one, you got to really have it in your heart, like a childlike curiosity to know more about what's really the capabilities of what you have, you know, and what are the purposes of what you're using it for. See, a lot of people are going to use it to become, you know, have more power over others, you know, like magic. For example, we do magic all the time. We're doing magic. We're magical beings to begin with. The fact that you're here is magic. When you look at certain structures, let's say in reality, like the pyramids of Giza, we don't have the technology today to replicate those pyramids, right? And then there's many different theories as to what they were even used for, right? But the same way, your heart, you know scientifically and medically what it does. There's a lot more to the heart. There's a lot more to your body as well than just, if you really think about it, what are you designed to do? Are you designed, right? Like the heart is just pumping blood and bringing nutrients, whatever, right? There's a lot more to your heart. There's a lot more to your gut. There's also a hell of a lot more to your animalistic lower root chakra natures. But you learn from the things you see outside of you as well. But don't indoctrinate yourself in it. You use that as a blueprint. You're observing the root core behavior of things, right? And you start to now integrate and tie in things and make sense out of it, because that's how we operate in this realm. It's through physical senses. But we have extrasensory that we don't use, right? But you use these physical senses in a way to make sense out of things, to be able to communicate with others here. But sometimes in the extrasensory perception type of way, it's kind of like you would have to know how to make sense of it for you to be able to communicate it with somebody outside of you. But even that, the main thing is to have an understanding of it yourself. Because many times things happening to you, you don't even have an understanding of it, you know? And then how can you communicate it to others if you don't know it for yourself? So the key is to get it to know for yourself. That's knowing yourself first. Knowing the evil and the animalistic side to you, the capabilities of what you have in you, and you learn how to use that in a way where it's going to be conducive to your life and society. Because things here, a lot of people, they appear to be good, but they're doing good only because they're following a doctrine. They are afraid to go to hell, or they're afraid to get locked up. You get what I'm saying? But how about you're just good because you know that that's already in you to be good, because you have that dark aspect of you under control. So you know, having that dark aspect under control is you knowing that everything outside of you is you. Humanity is darkness. Humanity is the feminine energy. Right? So how hard are you on yourself too? I mean, yeah, some people need an ass whooping, but does it come from a malicious space or a benevolent space? Or does it just come from a space? There really is no bad and good though. And there is no cause of anything. There really is no meaning to anything either. You're giving it meaning. So I remember that when it meant a lot to me to remember my dreams, then it would happen, right? It would happen. But the act of having a pen and paper, and especially before your brain is catching up to like waking up and shit, you're more than likely to get that communication online. That because you never really forget anything. It just has to come back to you. But it's there readily available the moment you get up and start writing your dreams down. But the way I like it, as far as like through lucid dreaming, becoming a more spiritual individual, because it's what I already am. It's whatever ideas you have of it. I noticed that success is not something I had to chase or try to acquire. It just happened. You get what I'm saying? It happened. And sometimes people think that success is having a red Ferrari or a red Corvette or, having a big house and whatnot. But all those things could be an after effect. But maybe you don't feel like as successful. You still want more. You still want more. You still want more. You really never get that fulfillment, right? But the moment you actually learn that fulfillment from that natural, pure space that you have, whatever effects you have, you'll always feel fulfilled, even if you have a Prius. It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to lie. I love, the excitement of life, of what it could give you when it comes to buying houses and, buying, new cars and shit, which I'm not really into new cars anyway. I like the older shit and hooking them up. I mean, that's just me. And people say, well, how would you know, Zigzag? Have you ever driven the new cars? Yes, I did. I rented all of the newest technology that you could possibly think of when I worked 10 years in the supplement company, because I was driving around all the CEOs, the RSDs, market managers of supplement companies, especially like GNCs and vitamin shops and whatnot. So I had to drive these people around. I had to take them out. The company, of course, they compensated me for that. They paid me, the company pays for that. I didn't pay for it. They paid for the, newest rentals. They wanted me to make sure I had the nicest cars, to make sure that these people were as comfortable as possible traveling with me. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, I mean, when it comes down to magic, let's say, if you're doing magic, right, to influence somebody else's life, that's not beneficial. But when you do magic, for example, to benefit your life, I'm going to get into another video on that, because I want to talk about the pros and cons of it. How even doing it for yourself, okay, if you're aware, because some things could be bad ideas you could change for yourself, right? It's magical thinking. Say, for example, you want to manifest a girl and shit, and you know the exact girl it is, but you have her in your mind. That's not beneficial. You want to just have a girl, but don't put a face to her. Just, again, the same way the energy signatures aren't showing themselves. You just know what it feels like. Just know the feeling of what it's like to be around that person that has no face. The environment, what it feels like, that person will appear in your life, right? But never have an actual person, because you're creating a path for that person. But then again, we're in the realm of many parallel universes, right, and whatnot. But to my understanding, never put a face to that character. The character will appear. The character for you will appear. The people that are already there are there. But if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. Just don't put the face on it. If I have anything else, I'll cover it in some other video, but that's pretty much all I got for now. If you like, and we will talk soon.